Oh, good.
Love Giants to another amazing episode of the Giant Love Chronicles. Hang tight because we got a great show for you. Welcome back, Love Giants. We are going to dive into an awesome episode. We have Grant and Christine Wattie. She goes by Chris, right? So we want to make sure we do that right. But I want to do a brief introduction of you guys. We don't really have any housekeeping to do other than we may tear these back a little bit, right?
Yes.
So we might just do these twice a month instead of every week. And so that might be the only change that you see. Yes, we're still together. Yes, it got quiet with the holidays. But,
well done.
But nothing has changed in our relationship. So we've got an incredible couple with us tonight. Today, we're thrilled to have Grant and Christine Wattie, a couple, not just in life, but in their mission to transform the world of leadership and relationships. So with their rich background of working with a diverse array of individuals from royalty to prime ministers, they bring a unique perspective to our conversation today. Their journey over the next 30 years is painted with freedom. That's looking forward, right? And unforgettable moments, all stemming from their serene life in Havelock North, New Zealand. Is that where you're at today?
Yeah, we're just looking at our beautiful garden that Christine looks after.
That's beautiful.
It's springtime here. We're coming into summer.
Yeah, it's freezing cold here.
It's cold and gloomy.
So amidst the simple pleasures and outdoor adventures, they run their mentoring business from their home, guiding individuals in business, relationships, and life. Christine, the founder of Aroha Leadership, and Grant, a mentor for leaders, are dedicated to infusing relationships with joy, fulfillment, and impeccable integrity. Join us as we dive into their extraordinary approach and learn how they enrich personal and professional relationships with enhanced joy and passion. Welcome to the show, Grant and Chris.
Yay!
Thanks, Zach. And
you're very welcome. We're gonna play around with the camera too a little bit, and so hopefully this works so you can still see us, but we see you primarily. But why did you have you guys always done this kind of work? Is this a natural fit for you to come together and do this, or were you somewhat different in the beginning?
Well, I think no, to answer your question, we actually met at university when we were teenagers. So we are just about to come up to our 40th wedding anniversary. So as you can imagine, in 40 years, there's been a lot of events that have happened over the years.
It's interesting how we met. Chris came running down these stairs at Massey University, and she had this big spark in her eye, and I thought, wow. And she said, who wants to go for a run? This is the first day of arriving at university, and about 10 guys put their hand up and we went.
Okay.
I didn't know she was a cross-country champion, though, and I was lucky enough to survive.
That's funny.
So whoever was able to catch up with her got the girl.
Yeah. I was tested out from the day one.
Always a test. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
So we've been together a long time. We met when we were young, and we've just about all that time we've been partners.
18.
Yeah, in business and life, and we had our children young.
We're still young.
We're still young. Grant says we've still got the next 30 years ahead of us.
40.
Or 40 even.
Maybe with AI.
Don't cut it short.
And the thing is, today we can. My brother was staying just a couple of weeks back, and when Grant was heading out for the day, we said goodbye. And my brother said to me afterwards, and he's one of our closest friends, he says, hey, Chris, I really appreciate how you two are as a couple. And, coming from my brother, it was like super awesome because he says it like it is. And I guess that's the kind of relationship that we want for anyone who's for you guys, for anyone. And whatever's brought you here today, I also want to be completely real and say it hasn't always been like this. So, we met young, It started off awesome, like most relationships do. And then over the years, we working together, having kids, things got in the way, and pressures built up, and we hit an early midlife crisis, and
of sorts.
Yeah. And it could have been the end, but fortunately, and this is one of the things that we're real advocates of today, is we always had a mentor in our life, and this particular mentor, her name's Rose, said, Chris, it doesn't have to be the end. And that was kind of like a real eye-opener for me, because I thought when this sort of stuff happened, the relationships crumble. But Grant and I, we connected again. We made a choice to be 100% committed to each other, and not only that, we sold that business, we retrained in therapy, and we've created a whole new life based on what we're both passionate about, which is actually seeing more love in the world, connecting couples, connecting with leadership, and actually making a massive difference. And we've got a really unique approach. Maybe you want to talk about the approach a little bit, Grant?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I just want to acknowledge you, Nick and Andi, for what you're doing, creating more love in the world. I mean, that is our passion. I mean, the greatest decision, the best decision I ever made was choosing Christine. So I don't know if it had anything to do with me at all. I just kind of had to show up, and Christine, when we did struggle, she really fought for our relationship, and she, we often say it only takes one person to create an amazing relationship, and Christine and I at that time, we changed, we went into therapy, we sold our business. The interesting thing was, at the time, we were traveling overseas. I was photographing the King of Malaysia, I think it was, and I asked him if he was happy, and he said, well, no, he wasn't. He would be a lot happier if he wasn't in the palace, because he was at the beck and call of the government, and he just wasn't happy. And then I came home, and my daughter Rachel said to me, why do you go overseas all the time? I just want you and Mum. And that kind of broke my heart, and that kind of led to us coming back home, selling the business, and that's we retrained in therapy and leadership. And
I've got a question around that. The idea, people look at financial success, and my vision is to work with leaders, CEOs that are really successful in the boardroom, but then they get home and they're struggling, in the places that really matter. And here you have a king. Is that who that was? It was a king, and has essentially everything, but is missing out on the things that matter the most, right? The things money can't buy. Right? How important is that? I mean, are people out of whack in their relationships? Is it? I mean, and relationship is just one facet of everything that we do as humans. But can you speak to that?
Yeah, I guess it's an interesting question, and it had me searching for what does actually make you happy. And at the time, I had sort of grown up. My definition of happiness was about what you do and what you have. If you achieve and you achieve in business and sports achievements, that will make you happy. But after a while, I just realized that wasn't doing it for me. I just wasn't happy. And so then became the journey to discover who we were, who we are, the journey to creating kind of the second half of our life. What would you say, Chris?
Yeah, like really, really common in New Zealand, and I believe in the US and all of the Western world really, is that people highly, highly value money and as success and fame and achievements. And I for most of us, there is a certain level of financial stability, that security that is desirable, so that we can, not be concerned about where our next dollar's coming from. But for most of us, that that never ends. It's like we get to this stage, and then we're buying another bigger house and a bigger car and that sort of thing. And what Grant and I have really realised is, while those things are good to have to a certain extent, it's like, well, how much is enough? And we can honestly say that sitting right here today, we just feel so grateful for everything that we have in our life, and it's less of a focus on how much money's in the bank, and more of a focus on this moment right now, how we can be in this moment, how we can connect together. Grant and I, also with you, Nick and Andi, and with each person on this session here, and how we can serve you. And I guess that's one of the outcomes that led to us saying yes to you guys' kind invitation to be here, is perhaps to offer some value to your listeners. Just even if you who are listening here today come away with one little tip, one simple tip that will actually make a difference, then that we'll feel satisfied. Because the thing is, when in the early days, when Grant and I were really, like, I used to feel like a hamster on a wheel, just like there was never an end to what needed to be done. And Grant's really entrepreneurial, and there was always a bigger fish. And we absolutely, to all our friends, to everybody, even our family, everybody that we knew, thought, oh, look, we are the perfect couple, like the ones that are really absolutely intimate, connected, everything's perfect. But the thing is, no one can see inside that, that hamster on a wheel kind of thing. And the other thing is that even though we were like that, we absolutely did not know how to change things. So we had no awareness. The only guidebook we had was our own parents, and so while they were still together, there was we didn't have another way. So
and I guess after 40 years and working with thousands of couples, in the early days we retrained in family therapy, relationship therapy, and since then we've developed a program for business owners to save their marriage, or where one person has checked out, one person's had an affair, one person's left, or the relationship's struggling, or just solid couples that want to go from good to great in their relationship. We developed this program specifically and these ideas specifically because it kind of condensed everything that we'd learned over 40 years, and with all the training we had, and what did work and what didn't work with business owners and successful people, or just anyone really, because all relationships are the same wherever you are around the world. Everyone wants to be connected, right? Everyone wants love and connection. And then, what you don't get in the early days of your life, in your childhood, you have these traumas and you have these kind of attachment issues or things that happen that I call love wounds that need to be healed, and they get healed in an intimate relationship. But
they don't even come up outside of a relationship, a lot of these wounds. So if you're single, when I'm single, we've talked about this a couple of times, is most of us are pretty good on our own, and then we get into relationship and our wounds show up, and then we're a lot of times communicating from our wounds. And I would wonder, did you guys have it? You didn't have it easy, right? Did you have differences that you had to navigate through that maybe weren't wounds? They were just differences. Does that make sense? Different beliefs, views.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And this kind of speaks to this whole idea of like what we call the tiger turtle. So in just about every relationship I've seen, when there's a trigger, based on this kind of wound or this need, which then becomes an expectation, which then shows up as some sort of frustration. It's just like, you're not picking the towel up off the floor, or, whatever it is. Or, we don't spend enough time together, or, or you don't make me a cup of tea. I made you coffee in dinner last night. How come you don't make me a cup of tea? Well, why are you being so grumpy for? I'm not being grumpy. You're just not listening to me.
Does that happen in relationships?
Well, that's like a metaphor. There's so many other things that happened, but that's a metaphor for everything,
right?
Where there's some sort of difference in expectation, and some sort of wound that I'm not enough, or I don't belong, or some sort of threat to the connection in the relationship. So then Christine becomes the tiger and I become the turtle. I just go into my shell, get frustrated, and just withdraw. And then this is what we see in a lot of relationships, this kind of tiger turtle dynamic.
How do you get people to come out of that shell? I mean, when you approach someone, a lot of times like that shell gets built up, the resentment or whatever, and you have one, I'm not saying anything, but you have one person, like in Chris's case, Chris was the tiger. She's just like, I want this, I want to keep it together. And was this like 20 years into it? Like, how far into it was
it? Probably about 15 years into the relationship. Yeah. So we had 3 kids. We were traveling overseas all the time with our business, and
so you guys like kind of grew apart in a sense.
Well, actually, it's just going back to the tiger turtle. That kind of that interaction, like to answer your earlier question, Nick, we're absolutely similar in some ways and different in others, and those very same things that attracted us in the first instance, which were our complementary differences, actually start to grate in a relationship. So, you probably guys, you won't have experienced that yet because you guys are still in that beautiful 5 months-ish stage. So that beautiful honeymoon stage.
We talk a lot. It feels like we've been together like 15 years in a 5-month period.
Yeah, nice. Nice. And so with this situation, we've got one person, and we're not fixed in those roles either. So while I might tend to be the tiger and Grant might tend to be the turtle, we can kind of flip over at times in different issues and different contexts. But so the way about that is actually to take a bigger picture view, and actually rather than thinking about the other person as an it and I it relationship, it's like thinking about an I thou relationship, to quote that's Martin Buber, isn't it? Yeah. And actually to treat the person like a person, and actually it's a collaborative win-win approach. And for that, we use the metaphor of a giraffe, because I don't know if you know, but the giraffe is the land animal with the biggest heart. So it's really, coming back to that Aroha leadership, that loving leadership, that connected, collaborative type of leadership, where we're looking for the good for the other person and the good for us. So, we're not, if we're the one who's normally going into our shell, then we need to step up and actually be a bit more assertive.
Yeah.
And if we're the one who's kind of the snappy one, then we need to dial that back a bit and actually listen more to the other. So,
but from a practical point of view, we would just literally have some sort of stop sign to walk away from that conflict, and then we both would agree that we're going to come back to create integrity. And this is kind of where this conversation started about.
Let's talk.
This beautiful post we had about integrity.
Yeah, that stop sign. Can you share with us kind of what you mean when you say you have an agreement or a stop sign that says, look, we're probably not in a space we could talk about this right now, right? So you agreed to come apart and come back together. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, so the background to this is managing your own emotional state and taking responsibility, or for me, taking responsibility for any emotion, and I just use the analogy of a metaphor of a traffic light. So if I go from green to orange or green to red, then it's my commitment as a way of being that I'm going to stop. And in the relationship, if that shows up as a, now I'm in orange or now I'm in red, like with a cup of tea, I'm frustrated, then as soon as I see it or Christine sees it, we agree just with the word stop, just like stopping at a traffic light. and then we will separate. So we'll just go our own way and have a deep breath. Sometimes it might be just a minute. Sometimes it might be half an hour. If it's a bigger thing, it might be a few hours. But then when I'm calm, I can then I have a creative way of being that I'm kind words always, because I didn't used to be kind words always, right? So I love Christine with all, my heart and soul. I lay my life down for her. I treat her as a queen. So therefore, if I'm triggered in a fight flight response, I'm not going to be treating her like a queen. So stopping just allows that space between the stimulus and the response to access a more powerful way of being, and then as stage 2. So then I'll come forward and re-engage again.
I'm so curious, right? Like go ahead.
I wouldn't stay the turtle.
Yes.
So then I've got to come out of my shell and make a request of Christine and say, hey honey, would you really could I please make a request? And what would you say?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Sure.
When you make yourself a cup of tea, could you please make me one, honey?
Yeah. So, while it might seem like a simple metaphor, the cup of tea is a metaphor for anything that we're wanting in our relationship. So
intimacy.
Yeah. So
cleaning up the house.
Yeah.
The lawns.
So for you who are listening and you're thinking, okay, how could that work in my relationship? Then what we encourage people to do is just to choose a word. Like, people use all sorts of words. Like, one couple used the word bananas. Grant and I find it's just, for us, the simple word stop works really well. And that we know that, in the olden days, me being the tiger would be chasing around after Grant saying, hey, but just before we stop, let's talk about this. And now I know stop means stop, because one or other of us actually needs to stop. And really, as Grant said, it can be a really short, like it might just be, okay, that stop is enough to stop because it's not a major issue. We take a few deep breaths and say, okay, I will make you that cup of tea and let's go and sit outside in the garden and have a chat about this. So that just even that short amount of time might be all that we need. If it's a big issue, for couples that are actually having bigger issues, it's like making a regular time or a frequent time where you can sit and actually talk about those issues. Because we just didn't know that was, part of what great couples do. So simple things like that can make a massive difference because you're prioritizing time, loving, caring, kind time with your partner.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you guys different energetically, like introverted, extroverted? Are you both the same energy level? You both love crowds, or you both love isolation? Like, how do you manage, the differences? As an example here, Andy's very outgoing, loves karaoke dancing. And I'm very quiet and reserved, right? I love my alone time. And so we've navigated that a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I just made that up, but.
so how do you navigate that?
Yeah. How do we navigate it? Or my question got flipped back on us.
So he's been really good too when and it's not all the time, but we both bend. And if I'm good having that quiet time and giving him that. And also he for the first time karaoke'd in his entire life a couple of weeks ago. And he actually liked it. Now, is he going to do it every week? Probably not. Yeah. But I think he is willing to give it a try and
communication too.
Yeah. That word communication, I think, is absolutely critical. And one of the things that I'd like to make the point is that our marriage our marriage course, which we call $1 Million Marriage, is actually a marriage leadership course. And, I work with businesses and teams and organizations in the leadership space as well. And one of the quotes that I've found to be true in leadership is that communication is the real work of leadership. So just hearing about your intentional relationship, you've come together and you're intentional and you're communicating about things, you're head and shoulders above many couples who just kind of try and assume and guess. And, when you can actually have those conversations and keep those conversations going, even when the issues come up that are a bit difficult, I think that's a huge key to success. Not to kind of shy away from conflict.
They come up a lot, and we talk. There's nothing off the table. Everything
we've talked about it all. Everything from
when it comes up.
Because we have different religious views, views around sexuality, views around outgoingness, all kinds of things, and so
and I think that speaks to one of the key distinctions for us is integrity, because integrity is whole and complete, right? Like by definition, if the relationship's whole and complete, then it's going to work. It's like the window has integrity, it has structural integrity, but as soon as we break it, it doesn't work anymore. So you fix it. So it's the same in our relationship. It has integrity. It works when we're both on the same page. When we go from two individual people to to getting aligned with our differences of expectations, then we have integrity. And the relationship house that we live, the house, if you look at the metaphor of a house, that has integrity, and we build the relationship just with all these different understandings, these different conversations about, likes and preferences, and just how we're going to do life, how we agree to do life together. But because we don't have to do life together, but we choose to, and then we create. It's just like a mountain with no top.
Yeah.
It just gets stronger and stronger. So I'd say our relationship is, for me, is like a 10 out of 10. I won't ask you to rate it, but for me, it's amazing because it's not that we fell in love, it's we built love.
We fell in love, and then we created that ongoing, growing, transforming love over 40 years, which is and one of the keys, going back to Grant's word on integrity, which absolutely, again, foundation of great relationships, foundation of leadership, is actually turning those unspoken expectations, you'll make me that cup of tea, or if I go back to
you're going to make it for me.
Oh, horrible. Well, if we do go back to the early days when we were together, we had more traditional roles. So we had young children. Grant was out working. My expectation was that, and the usual practice was that Grant would come home around 6, say, and help with the kids. That was an expectation. It was demonstrated many times, but not all times. And so what ends up happening when one night Grant decides to have a few drinks, or just
talk to the boss,
and in those days, of course, there were no mobile phones, so you didn't kind of keep in touch the same way. Was it slowly takes away trust? It breaks the trust that is essential to great relationships. So turning those expectations into agreements. So now the agreement that we would have is, okay, if that's the usual practice, like normally today's Friday here in New Zealand, Grant normally plays squash at 4:30. So I assume, because that's the usual thing that he does, that's what he's doing. If that's going to change, then we have an agreement, because I'll be doing my stuff around that usual behavior. So it just transforms relationships when we can go from those expectations, spoken or usual behaviors, into clear agreements.
Yeah, so then you can trust me, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And trust is the key for intimacy.
Yeah.
So
which is the topic of today, and integrity and intimacy, to see into.
So if I want more intimacy, I've got to do what I say I'll do.
Yeah, and that's another way of talking about integrity, is
keep
just
my word.
simply doing what you say you'll do, and letting the other person know as soon as you realize that's not going to be possible, and making up for the mess. So that's kind of the working.
You clean up your word, so you're still honoring your word, right?
Yeah,
so you're able to follow through and do that. Townsend Wardlaw talks about integrity being the delta between what you say you'll do and what shows up in the world, the measurement. And I like that. And the word integer, meaning wholeness. But it's really like, if your word is incomplete, if I continually say I'm going to do something and then not do it, or she sees consistencies in me saying one thing and showing up another way, I mean, the more believable is what's showing up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Versus the words.
Yeah.
Yeah. As Yoda said, do or do not do. There is no try.
Yeah.
So there's even no commitment. There's just do or don't do. There's no commitment in the world. It's just, you just do it, right?
Well, what about commitment? If people are dating, right? So when we were first trying to figure out if we were going to be a couple, we were dating, and there wasn't a real commitment yet, right? We hadn't gotten to that point that there was a commitment to be a couple, to be in relationship. And even in relationship, there's a recommitment in the relationship. So once we decided to be in the relationship, there was a level of commitment to be in that relationship, to show up a certain way. But then it's not like you just do that once and you're done for the rest of your life. It's almost like a realigning with the commitment, right? Like, this is where I want to be. Does this align for me? And it's not to your detriment, though. I wouldn't say that I would want somebody to stay in a relationship that's hurting them or is against what they would like for their life, right? But it's really sitting down with, is this where I want to be? And is this what I want to commit to?
Yeah.
Is this where I want to do my work? And we've had a couple of moments where we've had to really sit down and think, like, does this align? Does it align for us to be together? Do you feel that?
Yeah, we've done that.
Yeah.
Like, there's a crossroads of something, and just to make sure, is this going to work for you? Is it going to work for me? How are we going to navigate this?
Yeah.
And I mean, we're still in the process. We're still building. So we're not married. And even when you're married, you still have to get aligned constantly.
Yeah. So I just had a question around that. From your previous relationships, is there do you think there's a difference in how you're both showing up in this relationship from what you've learned from the previous ones, or is there this clear idea that it's just wasn't, the previous ones weren't working?
No, I'll take ownership, but I'll let you go first, and then I'll talk about my relationship separate, but what I've learned from it. Yeah.
Where I've learned is, and this is another thing, how do you navigate through being married to a toxic person? Very toxic behaviors. And you could accommodate, you could do this or that, but it's just never going to be right because of what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So how do you, I don't believe in staying in a toxic relationship where you just lose your soul and you just you'd rather choose death than be with that person. And it got to that point for me. So it didn't matter, because to make the other person happy, you totally lose yourself, because what their requirements and expectations were just like, you just lose yourself. And so like in those situations, I feel like I feel like I made the right choice.
Right.
Am I perfect? No. Did I contribute to it? Yes. But it was when you're dealing with that, and everything becomes your fault for everything, and you can't even dress the way you want or talk to people, and you're very limited on what you could do. You really can't work with that. So So you make a choice, right, on
often talk to people in this scenario and say, well, what do I do? And then what's freeing is when you kind of look at it as these two islands. It's like, on this island, it's just not working, and I'm committed to being on this island, and I'm going to be that person. And then if the partner isn't joining them on that island by becoming that person as well, you know, and that always keeps you in power. So then you're not, judging the other person or getting dragged back into how do I change them. It's just, who do I need to be to create the best version of me, the best relationship, and then it's up to the other person whether they want to join.
Yeah. And I feel like with
the
communication, he's not trying to change me. He's not trying to make me a different person. He's not trying to shame me for anything. So I feel like he's a very healthy person, and it's easy. It's a whole lot easier showing up for that person and creating something you want when I feel like you are.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer my version of that same question, right? Because I'm not healthy. I'm getting healthier. How about that? Like, I don't feel like I'm healed. I feel like I'm just doing my work, and in my previous relationship, we couldn't come together. We tried, we couldn't make it work. We couldn't communicate. We wouldn't communicate. It just slowly unraveled, and we lost trust with each other. And we couldn't come back together on that. We tried therapy together. She eventually said, I'm done, and pulled back real hard, that hit, and so it floored me. I think I needed an awakening in my world of how I was showing up, because I believe I was showing up pretty unconsciously, pretty traditional. I was raised LDS and had a lot of cultural views, and we were married within that, stayed together for 17 years. And a lot of it was designed around our cultural beliefs, right? And we both grew apart from those. And then we also grew apart from each other and had a hard time putting back together. And looking back now, I don't think I was equipped. I didn't know what I was doing, right? And so it made sense for us to separate. And in that separation, it got really dark. It was heavy. And I had to make some choices about who I was going to be moving forward. And took some serious ownership of my part in everything. And so even here, I still have to be clear about how I'm showing up in the relationship more than how she's showing up, right? I don't know if that...
So what's the key difference for you in terms of how you're choosing to show up now?
I'm showing up very consciously, and also I don't want to lose myself in a relationship. And so I'm being very clear about what works for me and what doesn't, what aligns for me and what doesn't, communicating it a lot more. And definitely very aware that I have my own ways of being that are somewhat neurotic, right? And that those might rub her a little bit. So I've got to be aware of how I show up in the relationship, and I take ownership of it. And I don't try to hide anything that's going on with it, So there's really a vulnerability that's happening here.
Beautiful.
I hear you guys say, I feel like I'm on the therapy table here a little bit.
Yeah, you better watch out. I'll take you back to your childhood.
Yeah.
I think you make a really good point, though, Nick, and I think you're not alone. And when I was sharing a little of our story before, when we got to a crisis point, we weren't equipped. I don't think most couples aren't equipped. And who's out there? Yeah, we can try traditional therapy. We can try someone in the church that you're in, but most people, they just, like they just don't have the tools. And this, the great thing about the process that Grant and I have used is it's like we've studied for the last nearly 20 years in therapy, in education, in counselling, in leadership, and goodness knows everything. Seems like, and it's an ongoing journey. So we have our own mentors today. And we've also got 40 years of experience. So, navigating with, alongside that and the clients that we work with, we've actually created quite a unique approach to support people who aren't equipped, which is many, many couples out there, because, you guys are happily together and that's beautiful. If we wind back to when we were struggling, if we could have had us in those days, so we're going back 20 years or so, if we could have had, might even be longer, someone like us to support us, it would have been way, way faster, because we basically were suited, but we just got stuck. We didn't know, we didn't have tools and we weren't equipped. So I think, especially if you've been raised in a traditional way, we certainly had traditional roles to start with, which, when we had our crises, everything was on the table. I started running the business because I was better at organising things, and Grant, he took the entrepreneurial side, and we just did more with the kids and cooking, and we worked differently, didn't we?
Yeah, we've been together 40 years, Nora. What's our
We're coming up 40 years married, so nearly 43 years together.
Yeah.
So,
and we're a solid 5 months over here, so.
Yeah.
And
that's where we don't pretend to be experts at all.
Yeah,
we're like,
the thing is, you're experts in your own lives, and
sure.
we're all at different parts of the journey.
Yeah, I think in the first half of your life, you're kind of attached to your ego needs, the things that that I need from an ego perspective, and then in the second half of your life, it's all about letting go of the I to become a part of more connected to the whole, and that's what I see a lot in self-development. Is it's kind of gives it away in the word. It's like self-development, but there is no self. Self is always in relationship. So a relationship is a noun, but the verb is relating. So you're always relating to your partner, to other people, to the world. Everything is in relationship to everything. And the great thing about being on this journey together, I kind of saw it in Chris straight away. There was just this intuitive spark in her eye that attracted me, and there was something kind of deep about there, that it was going to be a deeper connection that drew us together, and so because of that, it's been this constant challenging of the ego and dying to to what self wants, and more about crossing the bridge from my world into Christine's world, and then together we create this we world, which has got beautiful kids and grandkids in it now, and we still do exercise together. Christine drags me out of bed in the morning, and we go mountain biking up the hill this morning, and
it's a mountain.
And there was and have a coffee, and we might talk about just what's going on for her, or what's going on for me, or what we're reading, or just some new idea, and so we kind of challenge each other. We don't allow each other to get away with being, Christine won't let me off the hook for being a smaller version of me. She's standing for me to be the big me, because, my childhood thing was I didn't belong, on the schoolyard, the two kids didn't want to play with me. So I figured, well, I don't fit in, I don't belong. So my belonging was all about proving to everyone else that I'm okay, that I am someone in sports and business, and a lot of business people are like that. So my journey has to come back in the second half of my life from that kind of false self built on the ego and built on these wounds to the true self, which is I do belong. Gary, my coach, calls me the gentle giant, just like you. So now there's two of us, Nick. We're going to have to fight it out.
Yeah, I'll let you win.
Yeah,
I don't want you to break a hip. That would be terrible.
but but Krista stands for me being the gentle giant, and I stand for her.
Yeah,
Being the best version of her.
I think
Christ
that's beautiful.
I
because
love that.
yeah,
You're both lifting and encouraging each other to just be your better selves.
Because she'll do modeling, and she just shows up so powerfully in it. This world shuts off. She gets into that space of modeling, and it's like, holy crap, she's in a different world.
And I love the way he looks at me when I'm doing it. He just,
it's amazing.
Thinks I'm bigger than I think I am.
Yeah, and to remind her, when she's feeling down, hey, you've got that in you too. The giant, that we talk about, she's got that in her too. And so, and sometimes I forget that I have it, and she'll remind me, hey, you've got that. And so we do our best to be mindful of where each other are.
Be each other's cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing in relationship. And sometimes we talk about the second act. So before Grant was talking about the ego, kind of the basic things that we need to achieve in life, which are not wrong. We need that basic security to thrive in the world, but we don't need to be accumulating necessarily lots and lots of more possessions. But what we do need is then to go in the second act, which is definitely what we're creating, and you can create it when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, beyond. It's not really the age that you created. It's more the awareness that you're actually working together, that you're creating something bigger than yourselves. And actually, for us, our mission is to work with leaders and to help them to be feel happy, satisfied, and fulfilled in all areas of their business, relationships, and life. So that we sort of, that for us, that's what really lights us up. So sometimes it's with our very own children, that in every family there's things going on. Just this week, our son was made redundant, and he's got a small baby and partner and massive mortgage, and things happen. So sometimes it's with our own family, other times it's with the clients that we're working with, and we just move between whatever we feel called to be, whoever we feel called to be working with, whether they're a king, our own children, or someone on the street corner. We love working with diversity, all sorts of people.
That's beautiful.
What would you say is a question you wish you had been asked when it comes to relationship? So you've done a lot of these shows, and most podcasters, they'll have their questions that they want to go through, and we try and keep it fairly free flow. But sometimes a question gets missed. You're like, oh, I wish they would have asked me that. What would that be, and what would you respond to it?
Do you want to answer that, or shall I?
Yeah, you answer it.
Yeah, well, I'm not too sure. This is great. Thank you, Marie. This is great, because I was actually, my thinking was, let's throw it out to the audience, because actually this is why we're here, and we wanted to support people, and be there for the people on the show. So Marie's question: how to get trust and integrity back after emotional betrayal by your spouse?
Yes, so there's two ways of looking at that, and it feeds beautifully into creating the second half of your life, because in essence we've had two relationships. We probably had 3 or 4 relationships to the same person, because every time there's been a crisis, it's like the hero's journey, Nick. You go on this journey, and then you face these challenges. And an emotional betrayal is one of those ones that's going to make or break the relationship. And it really depends on how you both look at it. For the couples that survive that and go on to build an amazing relationship, they see it as this has happened, and ultimately even though it has the potential to destroy the relationship, it's often a symptom when you look into it, and it's hard to give a blanket answer because there is a lot of context, but if you look at it as a symptom of an underlying cause or a lack of intimacy, a lack of integrity, a lack of closeness, then you can go on to rebuild it. And if you both agree that you're going to kind of sit in a space of creating more intimacy and connection, building integrity in the relationship, then you can go on to create an amazing relationship, because often you have to go through a crisis to create something better. Like you have to fall down to fall up.
Yeah. So if I go back, can I answer that question as well? Because I think about as Grant said, we've had different challenges over the years, of course, like every couple. But I think potentially one of the biggest ones. It did seem unsolvable, and so that's for me personally. I just I have always had a very deep spiritual connection, and so I just went to the place of purpose, and that connection on a spiritual level, because actually all the other stuff we just weren't equipped, like we mentioned earlier, to tap into, because we didn't have it. So on that spiritual level, Grant and I just connected, and it's like then we could connect. Well, what do you want? What do I want? What do we want? And it was actually at that really deeper level. So it was not on a surface level; it was a deep level. And we knew, because we're soulmates, and from the first moment we met, I knew that I could marry Grant. I didn't know that I would marry him, but I just knew that I could. That actually we wanted to make it happen. But that's not always the case, so if there's betrayal and the other person's in a completely different space, as we've said earlier, it's not always the right thing to do, and if there's abuse and addiction and things like that, then people really do need to have specialist help. But going back to this question, I think that deeper connection was really what empowered our journey.
Yeah. So, say there is betrayal and everything. It takes both parties to be able to open up and communicate and dive into a deeper level, like the breakdown and how they got to that point. So what's lacking in it, kind of dissect where the weaknesses are, there is a disconnect. And then it's like you said, the side effect, right, of the disconnect. And so it does take both parties to be able to, one, be willing to communicate, take accountability, and recognize those things, and be able to communicate and find where the breakdown was and start to rebuild from that point, correct?
Yeah.
It goes right back to that tiger turtle. If you think about, there's no communication, so both parties are getting really frustrated about silly little things. They're just not able to make requests, not able to communicate, not able to talk. And then those frustrations build up and build up and build up. And then there's disconnection. And then there isn't the same level of intimacy and connection, and both parties aren't really getting what they want. And neither really know how to fix it, and just kind of blaming each other. And then bingo, there's an emotional affair, or one person checks out, or one person's spending more time at the office or golf, and you're just drifting apart. And that's like 50% of all relationships in the States, right? End in divorce everywhere. And it's just so common. And yet when both parties see that the root cause and take responsibility for your part in it, and then are willing to sit in a conversation to say, can we create a new relationship based, and learn from the past or not? And it probably comes back to the strength of your initial connection that you had in the first place, because most people do meet the right person. They just don't have the skills to create a relationship that's strong enough to be able to withstand.
So we're going to start our relationship with a divorce. So we were just going to get divorced, just get it out of the way, right? Then we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever consider that, or
are you gonna split? Are you gonna split assets?
Yes,
we're gonna split all that we have. Yes.
We answering that question. We were raised, both of us, fairly traditionally, and to stay married. But when we had the crisis that we had, I just thought that the only solution was going to be divorce. So actually the fact that that didn't happen, that we had this beautiful mentor, Rose, in our lives, who said it doesn't have to be the end. It was like, what? I never knew that there was another possibility. And that kind of shows the level of, yes, we loved each other, but we weren't in love with each other. We didn't have any of we didn't have the tools that we needed to actually navigate. So we've actually done this a really long way, because it's kind of like we reached out to a couple of people that we knew they actually didn't have any tools. Went to a therapist and didn't connect with them. So we actually went and studied counseling, therapy, relationship, leadership, all these things. And we did it this really long way. So I guess we've got all the theory underpinning now our own relationship and the couples that we work with. My particular philosophy is to really dial it back and keep it as simple as possible. So no big complicated things, just keep it short and simple processes as kind of underpinning the way that we work together, and also that we work with clients. And
I love that you both were willing. I love, you tried to people that didn't have the tools, you tried therapists, and I love the fact that you both were willing to do the work, to study, to research, to try to figure it out.
Well, actually, there's some funny stories around that, because it was I went to study therapy, and then Grant was talking about mountain biking earlier. It was a beautiful day. We decided to go for a mountain bike, and I fell off and cut my knee. So he had to drive. Well, he said, I'll drive you there. And so he came in and he got curious. So that was kind of like how this all started. It wasn't absolutely as intentional as you might think, but it just.
And they said, they said, why don't you do this as well? And I said, well, no, I've got to run the business. And at the time, Christine was looking after all the finances and the staff and doing all the hard work in the business. And I was doing the easy stuff, the photography and the marketing and all that. And I thought, man, I can't afford to do this.
And yes, Andi, we did choose to navigate it together. So some things were serendipitous, and we did.
But for me to answer that question, for me, I was just lost. Like at the time, I was working over in Malaysia, photographing, this a king or a queen or this billionaire. And at one time, I was with the Prime Minister. And he'd just come back from his mate, the Sultan of Brunei, and he said, well, I said to him, are you happy? And he said, I'd be happy if I was as rich as my friend, the Sultan of Brunei. And I thought, man, if that's your definition of success, I'll never be happy because I'm never going to have the wealth and power that he had. But the interesting thing was, at that time, we're spending time apart and we're traveling a lot, and I was just lost because I felt like, it's like the devil, Satan, saying to Jesus, Christ, I'll give you all of this if you'll just follow me. And that's how it felt like to me. In the end, I thought, well, I could stay over there and create all this wealth and live this amazing lifestyle. But it's just not me. So I had to really dig deep, and what really got me in the end was I was just kind of walking around lost, saying, it's like that proverbial, you take the path less followed. You get to this fork in the road and you say, well, am I going to go this way? Or am I going to go this way? And then I can remember, mentally going through it and saying, well, if I go this way, I won't be there at my daughter's wedding. I won't be there for my grandkids with Christine. I'll be there, but it won't be the same. And so if I'm going to be true to myself, my true self, then I really want to make this work. This is the most important thing. And so then we got really, really honest. And that's where we built that second relationship where we're both not prepared to put up with anything that's inauthentic in terms of what's going to make Christine happy, what's going to make me happy. And we're prepared to sacrifice our business, our careers, not sacrifice, but
sell them, change
them, whatever it took. You know, at one point we sold our house and moved to Melbourne, to pursue Christine's career over there. And we've done six or seven different careers and lived in about the same amount of places. But
at least.
Because the most important thing is our relationship.
Not only our relationship, from the strength of our relationship, it's beautiful to see our children and our grandchildren and them thriving, and the people that we work with too. Many of them we call friends now, because it makes such a big difference in people's lives when you have these few simple tools to actually navigate life. And what I really love, and this is why I also work in the business space, is because the tools that we use in the relationship space are the exact same tools that we use in the business. So sometimes people are looking for leadership tools. That, they're the same simple tools. So whether we're working in business or with relationships, they all interconnect. And when you get the relationship really thriving, then other areas of your life also will thrive as well.
Happy wife, happy life. Is that
I don't have one of those right now.
No.
It's crazy. We're an hour in, and I feel like we just barely got warmed up. And
I could sit here and listen to you all day.
Yeah, you guys are amazing.
Yes.
I'm curious, before we do wrap up here, because we really could keep going, but I'm wondering in the audience if there's somebody that has any additional questions you want to ask before we do wrap up, or if there's anything else you want to share before we do wrap up, if there's no question.
If you go to the website, we've got a video on the 5 key distinctions or the 5 shifts you need if you're going, if you are struggling in your relationship. The 5 things, like we talked about, the tiger turtle, we've talked about crossing the bridge, we've talked about integrity, taking responsibility. So we do a deeper dive into that. So that might be quite useful.
Yeah, is that something we can put in the comments after or share?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of different master classes on there that
Arohaleadership.com.
Yeah.
Okay. Aroha, AROHA.
AROHA leadership.com.
Under the resources tab, or grantwattie.com. Under resources, there's the marriage video.
Hopefully is that the right link?
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful.
Yep.
Perfect.
It was perfect timing because Marie was asking. So yeah, good.
Nice.
We got that in there for you. Guys, this is powerful. I know there's so much more behind it too, that we could talk about. I'm going to leave that up for a second there, but our vision with this is to navigate relationship, to do it differently this time around. And when we came together and started doing these podcasts, there's no guarantee that a relationship's going to last or how it's going to go, and we're still getting to know each other. And it was our commitment to be vulnerable about that experience, right? Because every person on here at some point had to go through those first stages of a relationship and really figure out if they want to be with somebody and work, get committed. So it's been enjoyable to hear you guys talk. After 40 years, I'm always curious how people do it. And you've shared, I know you've just shared the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
As far as that goes. Is there anything else?
We'll have to have a part 2.
Yeah, we might have to do that.
A deeper dive.
Yeah. I really absorbing everything that you're saying, and it's very intriguing. And I love how, just even with leadership, just taking that, because really, if you're not happy in the home, you're not happy in your personal life. It trickles. It leads everywhere. So
I think relationships is leadership. And if if you're looking at this whole idea of being, which I know a number of your community are committed to, this idea of who am I being in the relationship. I can't read a document or have a commitment to who I'm going to be as the best husband and father and therapist and coach that I can be on my own. It shows up in the relationship, and that's the best place to test your being, because you can't BS. I can't BS Christine. She sees it immediately and calls me on it.
Can't be a jerk here and say, "Oh, let me help you."
My kids call me on it. My 3-year-old grandson, we looked after them for 2 weeks, and he says, "Granddad, you're a bit grumpy today." And I go, "Well," he said, "I'm not your friend anymore," because he's crawling all over the table. And so I said,
"Right, call you out."
So I said, "Well, what would you like me to do?" And "Would you like me to not be so grumpy?" And he goes, "Yes." "What would you like me to do?" "Don't know." So I said, "Well, how about next time I just quietly, kindly take you off the table and
put Grandpa in timeout, put him in timeout."
So even in that, there's something in my being that that I get access to, and it all occurs in a relationship, because you don't exist on your own.
Didn't have anything to do with the fact that he woke up about 5 a.m. and he
Grandpa was
Granddad, I did a vomit. Oh, lovely.
So, Grant, I created an application today for AI that helps people if they're. So, the reason I did is there was a gentleman on a call today that said he had a hard time figuring out his declaration statements. Like, how do you even do that? And so I put together an application today that people can use to get clear on their I am statements, their declarations. But not from a thing of doing, because I think when it first got created, it was all about what you're doing. But it's more than that. It's about who you're being and that shows up as an expression in the world, right? So it's a little different from the way I was raised around it. And so we'll probably post a link to that as well, because
that's right.
For somebody that's struggling to figure out, like, who do I want to be in a relationship? Who do I want to be in my business? Who do I want to be in community and leadership and all these things? It really helps with that.
Yeah, and that's something that we haven't really talked about much. But when we run our $1 Million Marriage program, we do actually start with leading yourself. So it actually starts with who I'm being. So thank you for reminding me of that, because how can you lead in a relationship well if you're not even intentional about who you are?
Perfect.
So it starts with leading self, then it's connecting as a couple, and then it's the bigger picture.
So we need that AI link.
Yes.
And then version 2, you can create something that you plug into your ear. You're not being that. You're not being that. Your heart rate's gone up.
It snaps you, like something around your neck, like when you're not being it.
Yeah, you're being grumpy.
So then you'll create the perfect human beings. I think you're onto something there.
So what's cool about it is you can speak to it. It'll speak back to you. You can speak to it, it'll speak back to you.
It was amazing. I did it the other night, and it was real awesome. It was so awesome what it created. And then I'd correct it, tell a little more detail on everything.
It's amazing.
It is pretty amazing.
I think it's going to be helpful. So,
but sometimes your partner doesn't even speak back to you, so that's perfect.
We'll get an app for that too.
I designed this to be understanding.
AI boyfriend, girlfriend, partner.
You might not need a relationship after that.
Exactly. We'll just have our AI.
Right. Well, each of us will be walking around with our boyfriend, girlfriend AI. That'll be healing, right?
They'll give you everything you need.
Everything you need. Well, you guys have been awesome.
Yes,
thank you so much
for
your time and attention and wisdom. Like, holy cow, 40 years of not an easy road, and to just share the way you're sharing, it's like so useful, so valuable. And I know people pay you a lot of money to come and sit with you, and you just shared that with us. So thank you so much for what you've contributed.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your invitation, and the encouragement to every single person here today is actually to really believe in yourself and to know that you're worth it, and that you can create a relationship of your dreams. It really is possible for each one of us. In fact, we're created to be in relationships. So to actually to make that a reality in your life is one of the greatest satisfactions that certainly from our experience we see people enjoying. And
you live longer.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge you both. I've just got such a good feeling about the two of you, the way that you relate together, and I can see that you're a beautiful couple, and you're already making such a difference. And I think when you can look outward and help heal the world and bring more love into the world, that's such a connecting thing that you can do together, and that's something we enjoy doing and talking about how we're making a difference. So
well, she's like Chris, she's the better looking half over here.
Oh.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you guys. It's been awesome connecting with you, and
you too.
Yeah, thank you to everybody listening too.
Same here. So for those that are watching, thanks for being a part of this. We will do this again probably in about, unless we have a show scheduled, we'll keep that schedule. But every 2 weeks, you'll see an episode come out from us, and we'll share what we're up to. Sometimes it'll be just Andi and I speaking, and sometimes we'll have amazing guests like this on. So if you have any recommendations or things you would like us to talk about, please share, and we'll talk about them. We'll bring them up, and there's nothing off the table, really. I mean, there will be some things we'll say, we're not going to talk about that. But for the most part, there's really inside of a relationship, not much to talk about. So we appreciate you. Thanks for being a part of this, and we will see you in the next episode.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.